evening. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, tensions between India and Pakistan have hit a boiling point after this attack, the deadly Pahalgam attack. It was a terror attack in which Pakistani terrorists killed 26 civilians. India has expelled all Pakistani nationals, suspended the Indus Water Treaty and shut the Atari border, accusing Pakistan of sponsoring terrorism. In retaliation, Pakistan has suspended all bilateral agreements, including the 1972 Simla Agreement, effectively challenging the line of control. Pakistan has also banned Indian airliners from its airspace and has closed the Wagah border. With both nations escalating the diplomatic and economic measures, the region braces for further fallout. Where is this all headed? That's a big focus tonight on Left, Right and Centre. Well, joining us now, Ambassador Javed Ashraf, somebody who's been tracking all of the developments very, very closely. We'll go through all of the key points and developments which have taken place today. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us. I think first up, the question that needs to be asked is this step of asking all Pakistani nationals to leave our country. In your mind, is this perhaps the most extreme step India has taken against Pakistani nationals in the last several decades?
Vishnu, first of all, let me say that, there's no words that can actually comprehend or fully explain or reflect the absolute barbarity and the heinousness of this terrorist attack. We've seen many different kinds of terrorist attacks in India, including in Jammu and Kashmir. But this one on defenseless civilians, identified in the most crass manner by their religion, and shot so brutally in front of family members and friends, is beyond any level of barbarity, any level of humanity that you can imagine. So the reactions in the country are completely understandable. There are no words that are enough to condemn this in the strongest possible terms. But so therefore, some of the reaction that you will see, including the one that you mentioned, is a reflection of a very deep emotional response on this grave tragedy and of this brutal attack. I think that it is a reflection of the fact that, over the past decades, there has been a cycle of terrorism from Pakistan, sometimes ones that don't make the kind of headlines that this one did. There are some very big ones that we all remember that have always been followed by a period of escalation from both sides, and then there has been some kind of a return to normalcy, at least at the level of trade, commerce, people-to-people ties. But I think that what we are seeing signaling in this from Pakistan is that there are absolutely no red lines to what they can do. It was obvious in the Chief of Army Staff's message just the other day. So I think asking people of Pakistan to leave the country is both a pragmatic step, right, because of the nature of emotional responses that we are seeing. And second is a signal also that, we have made every conceivable effort in the past to try and keep a sense of normalcy in our relationship and every prime minister from the time of independence had tried to do that.
Ambassador Ashraf, let me just jump in with a quick question. If you look at what Pakistan has done, they've put aside, at least on hold, all bilateral agreements between India and Pakistan, and that includes the Simla Agreement signed in 1972. It was the Simla Agreement which, besides anything else, introduced the existence of the line of control which replaced the ceasefire line. If Pakistan doesn't
But I think, Vishnu, I think they have systematically, consistently violated the Simla Agreement. I think, they have had absolutely no regard for any agreements that they have signed. Pakistan is the kind of a state which will happily enter into an agreement and simply violate it the very next day. So if you look at the provisions of Simla Agreement, tell me which ones are the ones that they have actually honored. They have never respected the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country. They have never, ever accepted the method of peaceful resolution. They've never accepted bilateral resolution. Every moment, every year, you see them trying to invoke the UN and the international, countries to come and mediate this. So I think that this is just a symbolic message that they are sending to us. We, over the past, since now, 50 years, have every reason to believe that Shimla Agreement has only existed on a piece of
So
paper.
Pakistan saying that, look, this line of control, I mean, effectively, we don't
I think
recognize it anymore.
Have they ever really respected the line
No,
of
they
control?
haven't. If they're doing terrorist
They
attacks
have,
across
you
the
saw
LOC,
during
they aren't.
Kargil,
I'm
you've
just trying to
seen that
understand is them saying this. I understand the point you're making, but legally and otherwise, it makes no difference. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and in our position is always been that the whole of Jammu and Kashmir, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, is an integral part of India. And that position is not changed through the Simla Agreement, recognizing the existence of line of control. So the point I'm making here is that we have tried to respect the LOC time and again. They have not. And you've seen that happen time and again, including in '84. You've seen that subsequently all the way to Kargil, and at repeated efforts to change the status quo on the ground. So for them to say this is posturing, it is to reflect a sense of alarm, create a sense of alarm in the international community, and in a sense mobilize the domestic public opinion. And I should add over here that every time the Pakistan military feels a sense of pressure, internal pressure, it is because of their failures in Balochistan, of the kind of terrorist attacks that they are facing, the problems they have on the northern front with Afghanistan, a country they thought was a strategic depth for them, and a regime that they actually try to nurture. Is they're facing problems with them. They have differences with the civilian leadership. They have not been able to, in a sense, pacify Imran Khan. So what do you do then? In order to shore up the army's image, their respect in society, once again, you ratchet up the heat and pressure the heat with India, and therefore convey the impression that India is that existential threat against which the only institution that can stand is the Pakistan army. This is an old playbook. You've seen that time and again taking place. And also because when they fail, there's nothing worse for them than the sense of isolation and a sense of decoupling from India, which they're witnessing every day.
Ambassador Ashraf, let me ask you a direct question. Are we headed to some sort of military retaliation by India?
I think what you've seen today. Prime Minister's very clear, categorical statement. He didn't say anything yesterday. So he's been through a CCS meeting. He has spoken with all his advisors, and he has selected his words very, very carefully, if you notice. And it's not just a message to Pakistan, it's also a message to the international community And I think there has to be a great understanding for any steps that we take. Now, what those steps will be is, of course, we'll have to do this in a way we think is the most effective. We have to decide the objectives. It can't simply be to say that we are retaliated because we have been hurt. We have to also make sure that we are, in some sense, decapacitating their infrastructure of terrorism. And this can be a combination of several steps. It could be a series of military measures. It could be diplomatic. It could be going back to FATF to put further squeeze on Pakistan. So there is a whole menu from which to choose. Remember, we have to be sure that what we do contains an element of surprise. They would be prepared for what we may have done in the past, what we have done in the past, and we have also learned our lessons from some of the steps that we have taken on past incidents. So we'll factor all of that into account in deciding how, when, and where to take our steps. But I think clearly the message was very, very clear from the Prime Minister.
Ambassador Ashraf, the Indus Water Treaty, India deciding to hold that for the moment. In terms of putting pressure on Pakistan, reducing the amount of water which is available to them, it's not a switch on, switch off, is it? It will take time for us, a lot of construction activity to divert the waters or block the waters.
Yeah.
At the moment, this is more symbolic, or do you believe that this is a statement of intent which may be forthcoming?
I think, what you've said is right, that, see, this is once again a measure which indicates that, there is no semblance of normal relationship that Pakistan wants to maintain in this with India. Now, Indus Water Treaty 1960 was done in good faith. We have seen over a period of time, particularly in the last 2-3 decades, that Pakistan has systematically tried to stymie us. You remember in 2010, they raised this bogey of water wars by India, and this was playing it really large in Washington, D.C. At that time, they thought they had all the strategic levers because of the war in Afghanistan. Again, they did it in 2018, 2019, that India is waging water wars. Part of the problem they have to recognize is that discharges in rivers in any case are changing because of the climate change. So they may end up paying a very heavy price for this. See, so far we have maintained our part of the bargain. They haven't, because they have systematically tried to stall any works that we are able to do within our rights on the western rivers. So I think what will immediate impact will be on the operational aspects, which will have an impact downstream. For example, the flushing activities. Yeah. When do you flush it? What is the debt level that you maintain? Those things will have an immediate impact, particularly both during the dry season, which is currently now, but even more later. And sure. Then subsequently, when we start building, we can proceed and accelerate with our projects, and which will definitely have an impact downstream. Now, whether we do storage projects or whether we do run-of-the-river projects, remember, even for the run-of-the-river projects and for storage projects, there are design restrictions that we have, which does impose a certain, design challenges for us, and it also leads to suboptimal utilization of the resources of the dam or the run-of-the-river project. All of that will be out of the picture now. Right. And that we should be able to do what we need to do for domestic consumption, for non-consumptive uses of water, for agricultural purposes, and for the development of hydropower project, which in any case India needs a lot of. But I think there is a very strong message in this for Pakistan that if they cannot maintain even a basic decency or the levels that they can go, then we are prepared to take all necessary steps to reflect the true state of the relationship.
All right, Ambassador Ashraf, thanks very much for speaking to us. You're welcome to stay on if you like. I'm joined now by Kamal Sibal, former Indian Foreign Secretary, Major General Yash Mor, Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Expert, and General Rakesh Sharma. Thank you all very much for being with us. Ambassador Sibal, as I see it, India is doing this very deliberately and is following a certain path. There are any number of people on social media and elsewhere saying that let's hit them hard and let's hit them right now. Why are we delaying? And it's not the way it necessarily works. There is a certain sense in building up diplomatic support, and so far that essential step seems to be very much in India's favor. Would you agree that that is the way we need to work before we think of anything else?
Yes, I agree with you entirely. Government had to do something immediately, and it chose to take diplomatic steps, very important ones, in order to reflect the true state of the relationship by, first of all, on the Indus Water Treaty, suspending it or holding it in abeyance, which to my mind is the most strategic step that has been taken. It has long-term consequences. It will not produce immediate results. There is no way that either we intend to or we can stop the flow of water to Pakistan. But the writing is on the wall that we have warned that if Pakistan doesn't mend its ways, we can actually go ahead and abrogate the treaty. But even without abrogation, we have actually developed tools for ourselves to put pressure on Pakistan, meaning that we don't need to consult any more Pakistan on the projects that we are building on the western rivers under the treaty. Earlier on, as you know, Pakistan has tried to stymie us as much as possible, raising objections, appointing neutral experts, going into arbitration, delaying the projects, forcing design changes on us, and raising this hue cry that these projects actually will impact the water flow downstream, and therefore these have to be monitored very carefully by Pakistan. Now we don't have to go through these motions, and we can go ahead with the Kishan Ganga project and Ratle project and other projects, future projects that we have in mind. And this is going to be very, very important consequence for Pakistan. And the other steps we have taken in terms of expelling their military advisors, reducing the number of missions, closing trade on the Wagah border, cancelling all these visas. These are diplomatic steps that needed to be taken. And I think the government has been very wise not to immediately go in for kinetic steps. They are building up diplomatic support internationally by the response that we are making, and we are getting it from all quarters. And if Pakistan actually ups the ante, as they intend to do, by closing border space, saying that what India has done on the Indus Water Treaty is an act of war, and generally becoming much, much more shrill, they're actually opening up space for us diplomatically to retaliate, because if they talk about act of war, then we can preempt what Pakistan...
Right. And everything that they've been doing for decades in Kashmir is an act of war. It's as simple as that. It's a bit rich for them to be using those words of all. But yes, hold on for half a second, Ambassador Sybil. I wanted to go across to Sushant Sareen. Sushant, it's a familiar ploy by Pakistan, but it makes people sit up and listen. Nuclear blackmail. They've started it again today. How does India deal with that?
I think India is not supposed to respond to it, but perhaps it might not be a better idea. It might be a better idea, in fact, to say that, well, you're not the only ones who have this full spectrum kind of a thing. It's not as though you're fighting with a country which does not have it, because that's a kind of a language which the Pakistanis understand. Other than that, I think India should continue going about doing what we want to do. But I would just add a note of caution. I am all for, retaliating against the kind of attack that took place. I am all for exacting retribution from the Pakistanis. But I would really counsel the government to not make any heroic assumptions about Pakistan. Pakistan is and the regime in particular is in a very desperate situation. They're trying to marshal support behind the regime. And this is a very dangerous kind of a regime which exists in Pakistan. You have a peon called Shahbaz Sharif who's masquerading as the prime minister, but the real power behind the throne is the army chief, and I think everybody knows that. So the point is that the army chief, to protect his own position, is willing to throw his country into a war with India. And the thing is that we need to be prepared that if we take a kinetic action, there will be retaliation. I think we cannot proceed on the assumption there will not be. And if we proceed up the escalation ladder, because if you stop after one exchange, then you really haven't created the kind of deterrence which you need to start creating. So the moment you start going up the escalation ladder, then be prepared also that there will be losses in India. There are no costless or riskless options for it.
I think that's a key point.
And if you are continuing, Vishnu, if you continue to go up this escalation ladder in this tit for tat, then of course the whole thing can lead to an all-out conflict. So it might be a long shot at this point in time, but I think we should proceed on the assumption that this dynamic can lead out there, so that we are not caught unawares, that after something like this happens, we shouldn't say, oh shit, we did not imagine something like this would happen. My counsel would be, keep your powder dry, keep your forces ready, keep them on the alert, and then go ahead and do whatever the hell you want to do. But also be prepared that there will be certain costs, there will be a price we will also have to pay, and be ready to pay that. Then you should not have the kind of nonsensical scenes of hysteria which we see on the streets of India. Right now everybody's clamoring for war, everybody's clamoring for retaliation, but the moment something like this happens, then everybody clams up as to what exactly will happen.
I think
after.
Sushant makes an important point.
General Mode,
if we take a look at what happened when the day after the Balakot strikes, Abhinandan was shot down, there was obvious national outrage in India. It became the only talking point. But if there is an air war between India and Pakistan, which is a very real possibility if India were to go kinetic, as it were, then there will be pilots who are shot down on both sides, right? We may not have the stomach for that on social media or elsewhere, but in the real world, when wars or conflicts, even if they are limited, take place, there will be casualties. Do you believe that that is something that the government needs to somehow or the other explain to people? It's not one Abhinandan being shot down or one Pakistani pilot being shot down, which is a great victory. We're looking for something much larger.
Are you asking me?
I think
Yes, General Moore.
I think Vishnu, the government after the CCS meet and Raksha Mantri has met the CDS and the three chiefs, and I'm sure he has briefed the Prime Minister and CCS about the discussion that has taken place with the military leadership. I don't think we are going to go for any knee-jerk reaction and one-off strike like we have done earlier. This time, whatever we do, it will be very well calibrated, and all the three services will be utilized. And when you use the Air Force or the Navy, it takes time to mobilize. Even the Army, it will take time to mobilize. And the good thing that is happening is with the de-escalation on the Chinese front, if disengagement and de-escalation takes place, then we have sufficient amount of forces available in this region which can be sidestepped to inflict punishment that people are asking for. The other point of social media, and sorry to say, even the television, this thing is going totally haywire. There is no serious debate at all. So we should not just count that. We should not, worry too much about it. I'm sure the people of India understand this. The whole nation united when Kargil took place. Whole nation was united when Balakot and Uri surgical strike took place. That I think people will get prepared, and the stage will be set. The entire opposition is in support of the government at the moment. So I think we should not worry too much about that. Let the government handle this situation, and I'm sure they have all the plans. But let this be a well thought out, well calibrated military options, and let's wait. There's no hurry. Pakistan will saber rattling. They have already started. They are used to doing this kind of a thing. I think for some time, being a more mature democracy, bigger nation, we should be more calm, calculated, and composed. Vishnu.
General Sharma, it just struck me that what the defense minister said yesterday and what the Prime Minister said today is that we will hunt down the terrorists. Yesterday, the defense minister said we will hunt down the masters of these terrorists who hide behind curtains. That means targeted attacks against terror masterminds. That's not a one-off operation. Could we actually see a steady series of assaults, many of which we may never learn about, being done by India, not necessarily with the goal of sending a huge message to the country that we've done it, but one that deliberately takes out the terrorist leadership of Pakistan in a way that works militarily for us, which works for us as a nation?
Thank you, Vishnu, for inviting me. Actually, pain and anguish, we saw the scenes that came out of Pahalgam, and it's quite painful. Now, to answer your question, the fact is that there are many issues. I agree largely with what Sushant has spoken about the wars, and as the wars get escalated beyond to a limit where there will be response from the Pakistani side. They too have a military machine, and they have command and control better without the politicians' involvement there. So there will be escalation will mean that there will be damage on both sides. But having said that, there is a public opinion. Public opinion would also seek something. What you're saying, covert action, what was spoken yesterday by the Honorable Raksha Mantri and what today the Prime Minister spoke, the fact is that if you do covert action over a sustained period of time, taking out terrorists in various places that they are hiding or wherever they are, it does not tend to satisfy the anguish and the anger which is pent up in the entire country. So there has to be some semblance of what is actually visible there. The Indian IWT is one of these semblances to show that it has irked the Pakistanis so much that they claim it to be a declaration of war. So then there are covert options, yes, but there has to be something overt being done, which also doesn't escalate across to an all-out war that leads to immense amount of damage on both sides. There are also measures which are beyond Army, Navy, and the Air Force. We get stuck to surgical strikes and to the air strikes and those things. We can also target in other domains of warfare where the nation would have strength beyond the Army, Navy, Air Force. For example, in cyber domains, or maybe electronic warfare, or maybe many other venues which can't be spoken, even cognitive, where we can target the people and target the Pakistanis in a better manner. And maybe the time has come for us to say, okay, enough about Balochistan and you're blaming us. Let's say, okay,
Pakistan has an anxiety towards Afghanistan. They are worried about Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So we get involved. We say, okay, enough. Yeah, you have done what you have done. And now we also open our hands up and say, okay, let's do our bit across on the Western Front. As it is, we are talking to the Taliban. We have better relations with Taliban today than the Pakistanis have got. So it's not only kinetic means of targeting, people saying launch pad. Launch pads have no meaning whatsoever. Terrorist camps have just no meaning. They don't deter in a longer term perspective. We have to do something sustained over a period of time. And the sustenance means kinetic, but more non-kinetic and more covert. So it's an amalgam of the whole thing that we must bring to bear.
All right. Ambassador Sybil, I've just got 1 minute left on this. Is there anything further that India needs to do diplomatically here on?
No, I think we have mustered a great deal of support from all sorts of quarters, particularly the United States of America. I'm a bit surprised and happily surprised that in addition to Trump himself making a very strong statement, the Vice President Vance has done it, the Secretary of State has done it, the State Department has done it, many senators and congressmen have done it. Iran has made a very interesting statement where they have identified Pahalgam as India. They're not equivocating the Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir. The Pahalgam India is a message to Pakistan also, the Arab world, Saudi Arabia, UAE, other countries. So the diplomatic background for any potential action that we may take is favorable. Though, of course, no country will directly encourage India to take kinetic action. But if we took kinetic action of various kinds, then I think we'll receive some understanding. But the last point I want to make is that, after all, this terrorism and everything else is a violation of the ceasefire.
Sure.
Because this is being promoted by the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan himself.
No, absolutely.
Therefore, is there any value in continuing with the ceasefire? And therefore, open up this line of actual control and keep inflicting damage on Pakistan. They will hit back, no doubt, but we'll have the upper hand, I think, and therefore that's the point of pressure on Pakistan.
Look, Sushant, I'm run out of time. Sorry, I'll come back to you and we will keep discussing this, over the next finite period of time, I think is what Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, said yesterday. But thank you very much for joining us. A little while earlier on, I spoke to Bob Blackman, Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom. The international aspect of all of this is important. Let's listen in to what he said. With the situation between India and Pakistan developing very quickly and tensions really being ratcheted up by either side, there's a great sense of concern, not just here in the subcontinent, but across the world, on what may happen next. Joining us now, Bob Blackman, a British MP. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. If you go through the latest series of announcements which have been made just a couple of hours back, all Pakistani nationals in India have been told to go back, and India has asked all Indian nationals who may be in Pakistan to return as well. Where do you think this is now headed?
Well, clearly, my first thoughts, obviously, are condolences for the victims and their families who suffered this terrible terrorist atrocity. I think the first thing, obviously, is to identify and bring to justice the perpetrators. Once that happens, then it can be quite clear who exactly is responsible for this atrocity. Now, what we're hearing, and I raised this issue in the UK Parliament this morning, we're hearing that it is the terrorist group Lashkar-e-Taiba, who are, of course, a Pakistani-sponsored terrorist group. And the reality is that if it is them, then clearly whatever action that India chooses to take against that terrorist group, I think we in the United Kingdom should strongly support. We cannot have this terrorism taking place at all. There have been a number of skirmishes, we know, between military personnel across the line of control. But this is the first really serious terrorist attack on specific individuals who are tourists, pilgrims, most of them newly married as well, being deliberately shot by terrorists. I think the escalation that's taking place at the moment is, of course, relatively neutral in the sense of expelling diplomats, revoking visas, closing the border. And I hear and understand, but we haven't got this confirmed yet, that the Indus Water Treaty may be suspended, which obviously would be very serious news. It has been. We haven't had that confirmed to us in the UK yet. This evening, just about time of your show, we will be holding a vigil at the Indian High Commission. I will be representing the Conservative Party there. And I think the whole House of Commons condemns the terrorist atrocities that have taken place. I do think this is something where we've got to call out those that are responsible for sponsoring terrorism. It's quite clear that if it is this terrorist group, that the Pakistani government must ensure that all those terrorist bases along the line of control are dismantled and the terrorists dispersed. It cannot be acceptable in any shape or form that these terrorists continue to operate freely and almost with either with the direct support or indirect support of the Pakistani military. And clearly the world needs to watch this, because obviously when the last time we had a serious confrontation, it ended up with both India and Pakistan coming to the brink of war. And I think, I've already said that one way or other, the terrorist bases have got to be dismantled.
Sir, there is a sense here in India that India and Pakistan may actually be fairly close to some sort of a conflict situation. Given what we've heard Prime Minister Modi say, even today, where he said that India is going to hunt down these terrorists wherever they may be. Well, we've heard very strident remarks from Defense Minister Rajnath Singh yesterday as well, saying that India's response will come in a finite period of time. This being the case, will the United Kingdom, in your opinion, support Indian military strikes on Pakistan should they occur?
Well, I do think, obviously I speak from a personal capacity now and not from the UK government's perspective. I think the reality is this. We've got to identify who those terrorists are, who is responsible for supporting them, which particular terrorist group they come from, and if they have strong links to both the Pakistani military and the Pakistani government. If all of those come into play, and this is what we suspect to be the case, then I would call on the UK government to support India's action, military action, against those terrorists, even if it means causing a confrontation with Pakistan. No one wants to see war. I'm sure no one wants to see war, but it cannot be acceptable that terrorist outrages like this can be allowed. It does appear, it's very clear that the terrorist atrocities were particularly directed towards Hindus. And it wasn't indiscriminate firing. This was deliberate, targeted firing on Hindu pilgrims. And I think that brings it home to the challenges and problems that have taken place. And we can compare it literally to what's going on in other parts of the world right now. This morning in the Commons, we dealt with the position on the war in Ukraine. We also dealt with the civil war going on in Sudan. And I was a bit disappointed, to put it mildly, that we didn't have a Foreign Office statement on this terrorist atrocity, which in my view should have taken place. I will be calling next week for there to be a statement or urging the Speaker to grant an urgent question in the House, so that next week, we don't know what's going to happen this weekend, but next week we will actually get to debate the issues in the UK Parliament, and I hope give our strong support to the government of India.
Sure. Mr. Blackman, let me ask you this. India has always stated that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. When you ask for evidence linking these terrorists who may have been involved in this attack with the Pakistani military or government in any way, shape, or form, given the nature of the attack, given how sophisticated it is, given that they're carrying automatic rifles, which cannot be procured in this part of the world off the market in most cases, it does seem that the involvement of the Pakistani military or the ISI, which is essentially part of that, it's always been there. And therefore...
Indeed, I would worry that the statement...
terrorism?
Yeah, the statements coming out of the Pakistani military and the Pakistani government yesterday seem to be inciting this terrorism as opposed to condemning it. and I think this is one of the problems here, that irrespective of whether this is a terrorist group which has strong links with the military in Pakistan or not, they've been supplied, as you quite rightly say, by some form of military operation. Now, we can all suggest it may be this country or that country, but the fact of it being so close to the illegally occupied part of Kashmir, where Pakistani forces are present, it does suggest very strongly that it is the Pakistani military that are supporting them. So they've got questions to answer as well in this regard. And sure, as you're right, the Indian government have always pointed to Pakistan being the epicenter of terrorism, and indeed in various different times, countries have had to go in and neutralize terrorists in Pakistan. And if India does the same thing, then the world should support it.
Yeah. Bob Blackman, thank you very much, sir, for being with us and sharing your views. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with the situation between India and Pakistan now becoming extremely tense, with all sorts of measures being announced by India, there are huge concerns that this may be heading to a situation where there may even be conflict at some level between the two sides. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves just yet. I think it is important to reflect on the decisions announced by the government so far. Joining us now, Ambassador Sharad Sabharwal, former High Commissioner of India to Pakistan. Thanks so very much for being with us. I think the first point, let's start with today, is that all existing valid visas of Pakistani nationals in India have been cancelled. All Pakistani nationals have been told to return by the 27th, and those with even medical issues have been told they can stay on for only 2 days more. That means till the 29th. In your mind, is this perhaps the strongest step taken by India against Pakistani nationals so far?
Yes, I think, visas, there have been a lot of restrictions for some time on the number of visas issued. I mean, for example, when I was the High Commissioner up to about 2013, we used to issue a large number of visas. But then, it progressively went down, and the number has been coming down. I would say that barring the steps that we have announced, according to me, barring the one concerning the Indus Water Treaty, they are largely symbolic. You close the land border, and those people who have traveled through the land border and need to go back through it, they have been given some time to go back, reduced the size of missions from 55 to 30, and then, expelled Pakistan's military, naval, and air advisors. These are all symbolic steps. The only step of consequence announced so far by India concerns the Indus Water Treaty.
I'll come to that in a moment. What about what Pakistan has said when they've said that all bilateral agreements between India and Pakistan are being put in suspension or in abeyance, including the Simla Agreement? And I ask about the Simla Agreement because the line of control, which is the de facto boundary between India and Pakistan, was formed in 1972 through the Simla Agreement. If Pakistan says they don't agree, they don't accept the existence of the Simla Agreement right now, what does that say about the status of the line of control?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, it was converted from a ceasefire line into a line of control under the Simla Agreement. Now, let's be clear that Pakistan has not ever adhered in letter and spirit to the Simla Agreement, or bilateralism, etc., etc. Now they are saying that they will exercise their right to cancel all these agreements. Now, India has not touched the military CBM agreements. Now, I ask myself whether when Pakistan says this, they also include those agreements. But you are absolutely right. Then it throws everything concerning the line of control into a melting pot, not from our side, but from their side. But we must understand they have reciprocated the Indian measures. Plus, they have announced some additional measures. This is one of them. They have stopped Afghanistan's transit trade through their territory. And they have also, regarding the Indus Water Treaty, we'll probably come to that later, said it will be an act of war, etc., etc. To my mind, this is a response which is very belligerent. but it is aimed at creating a standoff to invite intervention by other influential countries. This is what Pakistan has been trying to do, saying it will be a declaration of war and that we will respond with full spectrum of our force. Now, this is nuclear blackmail, which they have resorted to. This is an attempt in that direction.
Yeah. Ambassador Sabharwal, for us to implement what we said yesterday, holding the Indus Waters Treaty, essentially implies that ultimately millions of Pakistani citizens, whether they're farmers, businesses, or just normal civilians, may face a huge dearth of water. But correct me if I'm wrong, to implement this threat would mean a long period of time because there would need to be further constructions. It's not a switch on, switch off mechanism at the moment, is it?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It is a psychological blow to Pakistan as a lower riparian. A treaty which functioned even during the wars of 1965-71 has now been suspended. In that sense, it's a psychological blow. But I think they also understand, and we should know that we do not have the infrastructure to appreciably curtail the quantum of water flowing to Pakistan. Retain it, store it, and divert it for our own use. Secondly, we also do not have enough infrastructure to influence in a meaningful manner the timings of flow. This has been a worry on the Pakistani side that India could influence the timing of flows during crop sowing season. Now, we do not have, according to me, sufficient infrastructure to do anything appreciable on that front also. So this is something which we have declared, but in the short run, our capacity to change things on the ground is limited.
Ambassador, I think what will inconvenience all of us is Pakistan's decision to restrict the overflights of Indian airlines. We have huge, our aviation sector is booming. People are traveling west all the time. So we've had this in the past as well. Balakot was the most recent one. Do you believe we are in for an extended period where this inconvenience, is felt by all of us, passengers?
Yeah, this is something which has happened in the past also. They have done it. Look, we'll, I suppose, presumably now suspend all Pakistani flights going eastwards through our airspace. But the number of flights, Pakistani flights going eastwards is much smaller than the number of Indian flights going westwards. So they are trying to hurt us by taking this measure, which they have done in the past also. I think that is what it is aimed at. So it's a game of question now, if I may say. We are trying to ratchet up pressure on Pakistan, and they are trying in turn to ratchet up pressure on us. And one of the things they're doing is throwing a nuclear threat at us, which they have done time and again. But the idea is to create a standoff and then invite intervention of other influential countries and counsel by them to the two countries to de-escalate the crisis somehow.
All right, Ambassador Sabharwal, we've seen it all in the past as well, but I think India's hand may have been forced as a result of these horrific attacks in Pahalgam. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.